Welcome back to another edition of the Edge podcast. Publisher Brendan Slaughter, joined by Beavers Edge recruiting analyst Dylan Callahan-Crowley and Beavers Edge senior writer Ryan Harlan. We're coming to you guys the day after Oregon State's signing day, as the Beavers inked 9 new names across the day yesterday. We'll be getting into that here on the podcast. Also talking the first kind of impressions of JaMarcus Shephard on the recruiting trail, as the Beavers ended up flipping a few players yesterday as well. So some exciting times as the Beavers ended up, as I mentioned, signing 9 guys. We'll be kind of diving into each. But again, welcoming in Dylan and Ryan as well. Good to see you guys. Let's go ahead and kind of just start with the class. And I want to start first, Dylan. Obviously, kind of let's start with the guys that we necessarily didn't expect yesterday. And just looking at the list, that was former Ole Miss commit Jamison Powell. That was Maryland wide receiver Jesse Legree, and then obviously Caleb Metzner, who flipped from South Alabama. Beavers also got Lance McGee back in the fold as well, but we kind of heard some good things from him going into signing day. But just kind of talk about the Beavers' ability to kind of pull a few more names, and especially in the case of Legree from Maryland. JaMarcus Shephard already kind of starting to flex that recruiting pool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this is a guy that, will come into, well, during the search, we were talking about who would bring energy on the recruiting trail and on the field. And Shepard was one of those guys who definitely bring energy on the recruiting trail. We talked about that when he got hired as well. And you've seen that here in the early days. I mean, him and the staff that he's put together so far. And, it was important that he got that GM hire out of the way early. It looks like they're retaining JR in the on the recruiting staff as well, which is a carryover from the last staff. It's an important carryover, which allows some stability on the recruiting trail, a name that a lot of these kids are already familiar with within the university. Somebody who's already familiar with the university and has to a degree the blueprint for a sales pitch when you're talking more than just football aspects of Oregon State and Corvallis. So, he got those 2 big key assistants on the recruiting show already, and it's paid off here in the first few days of his tenure in Corvallis. Getting McGee back in the fold was big. Getting Thomas's stick was big. I mean, we can be honest on here. I mean, without giving up too much, I mean, Thomas signing yesterday wasn't necessarily, an 100% given in the afternoon, according to our sources regarding that situation. But they got that one across the finish line. They got Jamison Powell, a former Ole Miss commit, and they pick up Caleb Metzner, who, not going to blow anybody away in the rankings aspect of things. Neither would Jesse Legree, but 2 guys who have production, 2 guys with plenty of upside, and just help fill out this class. And not every kid's going to be a home run. Not every kid's going to make an impact for Oregon State, but as long as you can see the vision with each commitment of what they could potentially be down the road, they're all solid. They're all worth taking at this point in time for Oregon State. So I like what they've done on the recruiting trail here, and they're not done yet. They maybe add one more here before the sign-up period's over.
Absolutely, and I also want to mention the other guys in the class as well. Sinai Thomas, younger brother of Skylar Thomas, signed, as well as Jeremiah Brown, the linebacker from San Jacinto, California, as well as Kai Wheaton. And I got to give a credit to my coworker at Rip City Radio, Chris Burkhart, but he said if Mike Parker doesn't already have Kai Wheaton's gonna score, ready to go, lined up. Kai Wheaton, son of Kenny Wheaton, the Oregon legend. That would be, it's kind of cool, a cool little connection there, especially cousin of Marcus Wheaton. You've also got Adele Dorr in there as well from Issaquah, Washington. Landon Cook, the tight end from De La Salle. But Dylan, I also wanted to mention the thing that's kind of obvious in this class too, and we saw them add a preferred walk-on defensive lineman today, but the lack of trench guys here. No offensive linemen in this class, no true defensive linemen, a few edge guys, obviously no quarterback, no running back, some good receivers, but I'm kind of curious how you think JaMarcus Shephard may kind of approach the transfer portal with what you're seeing from the class.
Yeah, no, as we've seen in the past, Oregon State has the ability to be aggressive in the transfer portal. I think that's been no surprise. I mean, that shouldn't come as a surprise. Look at what they've done at quarterback the last few years.
Sure.
You're not exactly, paying nothing to get those levels of quarterbacks. I mean, I do wonder if there's from not Shepard's end, but from other people's ends, if there's a little bit of timidness, and by other people, I mean boosters and such, when it comes to quarterbacks, because they've
Sure.
gone big name fishing the last few years, and they've all kind of backfired. I mean, DJ wasn't terrible, but he wasn't exactly
8
great
wins
either.
looks nice in
Yeah,
comparatively.
exactly.
Yeah,
He wasn't
yeah.
he wasn't a superstar, but he was
Sure.
solid. Obviously, this year with it did not work out at all. So I wonder if there's going to be timidness on that level from some boosters. But yeah, they're going to have to be aggressive in the transfer portal. I mean, it sucks having uh, no offensive defensive line commitments. The
Sure.
championship teams are built in the trenches. But at the same time, uh, this hurts more so in 2, 3 years than it does right now, just because these guys weren't going to be making impacts next year. You're still going to have to go to the transfer portal and build your trenches for next year through the transfer portal. Now, you're not looking as necessarily of 1 or 2 year hole fillers. You're looking at probably looking for guys who have 3 or even 4 years remaining uh, to play their college ball and build in your trenches that way. Maybe they add a guy here, and you still have the February signing period, so there's
Sure.
still time. But yeah, they'll have to be aggressive in the transfer portal at those positions. But unfortunately for them, quarterbacks are expensive, even the bad ones. Uh, Running backs are not necessarily cheap. Offensive linemen are not cheap. So they're going to have to, those working the numbers in the football building. It's going to be, they're going to be busy for the next couple of weeks. That's for sure.
Resources are going to be absolutely key for JaMarcus Shephard, and this is where I want to bring in Ryan and get his thoughts. Obviously, we've kind of talked about maybe JaMarcus Shephard getting a little bit of what he wanted as far as bringing over Aaron Hodges as the general manager, having a general manager to kind of run the show. My question for you, kind of Ryan, is do you think Shepard is going to get the support that he needs from the university? Maybe whether that's an assistant coaching pool, NIL budget maybe being increased just at the earliest onset of this.
I mean, if Shepard didn't take this job, I think you probably feel that he doesn't have the resources to succeed, right? But he did. So at least there is some confidence that from when we heard Shepard and Barnes speak that they're both in lockstep together and kind of
Sure.
the vision of what Shepard's looking for to kind of turn around Oregon State after a 2-10 season. So he probably has the resources that he's after. Now, in terms of NIL pool, we kind of don't know what that looks like right now, given the whole Blueprint Sports situation, which talked about earlier on in the year, but also too, we've kind of heard some mixed numbers on what that salary pool looks like. Nothing quite definitive either yet. But
Sure.
if you're able to bring over some guys and make that a little more, I would say, sizable than probably maybe what others have been getting at Shepard's previous stops, which is likely where he's going to pull from for
Hmm.
guys that have worked with him in the past. It's probably enough to entice them to come over in addition to the relationships that they do have with Shepard. So I'd say yes, that he has the resources. It's just, I think we need to know what the exact figures are in terms of both NIL and salary pool.
Certainly, I think that's, spot analysis. I think that's going to be key as we kind of, see Shepard rebuild this roster again. Make sure you're checking out BeaversEdge.com for all the latest from Dylan, Ryan, and myself. Obviously, we keep you guys locked in. Signing day coverage. We still got coverage spilling out from yesterday. It was a busy day. Obviously, JaMarcus Shephard's press conference earlier this week. So much going on for Oregon State football right now. It's been very busy, and it's a great time to get in on the damn board, be talking with other Beaver fans too. Ryan, also want to get your thoughts on some news recently. We've, obviously reported some names that we're expecting to hear to join join, the staff at Oregon State under JaMarcus Shephard. But the most recent since we last potted is we're expecting former Oregon State defensive lineman Inoke Brechterfield to join the mix. The Baylor defensive line coach likely coming over from Oregon State per our sources. Again, multiple sources have had it out there. CBS had it first, but I'm kind of curious your thoughts, and then I'll go to Dylan too. Dylan, I'm curious your thoughts on Brechterfield, but Ryan, let's kind of start with you. Your thoughts on bringing an Oregon State alumni and someone that he's worked with previously together. Shephard has.
Well, Shepard did say that he wanted to have Oregon State alumni on his staff, and he has done as so with hiring Brechterfield. Now, people I think are probably going to look at his numbers, his defensive line numbers with Baylor, and make their judgment off of that, which that unit struggled. They were kind of in the middle, a lower tier in the Big 12 this year, but like outside of that, I mean, he's coached guys like Aaron Donald that UW defensive line on the way to their national championship appearance. That was really strong group as well too. So there's good, and there's obviously some concern too at the same time. But clearly, Shepherd likes what Brechterfield has done as a coach and has seen, behind the scenes of what that looked like up in Washington. And I would probably, say that hiring Brechterfield compared to what the defensive line performance has been for Oregon State these past 2 years is probably I'd rather have a group that's kind of, at least around average, because defensive line has struggled at times for the Beavers these past two years. I mean, that first year in 2024 was a lack of bodies, and then this time around, you just couldn't get after the quarterback to save your life at that point. But they eventually got better in that department. So I think it's just a wait and see on what Brechterfield group ultimately ends up doing and what talent holds over from this year and what talent they can bring through the transfer portal or in the later signing periods to kind of flush out that room a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I think you're kind of spot on. I mean, I remember a couple years back when we heard that Eliza Tuyaki was going to be the defensive line coach, obviously with his defensive coordinator experience with Kalani Sitake at BYU. I was kind of excited about that, and not to mention, his connections to the poly community as well. But like Ryan said, I think last year you were decimated by injuries. I mean, Oregon State's defensive line last year was as hurt as, and I'm talking 2024, Trent Bray's first year. It was rough, right? When you're putting Dylan Sikorsky at nose tackle towards the end of the year as a true freshman offensive lineman, just as a guy to kind of fill up space, that kind of will tell you the struggles there. I think it got better this year. I think the pass rush was there, but we've also kind of seen, for the most part, and I'll lead this into Dylan as well. Shepherd's wanted to bring in his own guys. We're still kind of determining officially who's going to be there, who's not going to be there. Early indications, we've kind of seen, Ray Pickering's not going to be there. There's other staff changes that are coming as well. It kind of seems like JaMarcus Shephard has wanted to bring in his guys, and I'm curious your thoughts on that, Dylan.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I got to say one thing on Brechterfield too, I mean, a pretty, good sales pitch to a recruit is when, and I'm double checking the numbers here. Give me 1 second. So 36 and where'd he go? I mean, he's developed over the last, 20 years, two of the best pass rushers in the history of the NFL, and Aaron Donald and TJ Watt. So, I mean, I was looking to see where they ranked all the time.
Okay, I know that.
TJ ranks 36th all time, one ahead of his brother. Aaron Donald 44th all time. But, I mean, you look at it, and the last 20 years are probably top 20. Been a lot of great pass rushers, but at the same time, TJ Watt, Aaron Donald, those are two the names in the NFL over the last decade when it comes to defensive linemen. He developed uh, you know, Aaron Donald at Pittsburgh. I believe he was right there at the end of Donald. Yeah, he was there all 3 years of Donald's career at Pittsburgh, 2012, 2013, 2014. And then at Wisconsin, he developed TJ Watt and Nate Herbig, who's also a pretty good NFL player himself. And uh, hasn't developed the same level of names at Vanderbilt, Washington, and Baylor, but he still has had good defensive lines there. So, I mean, this a lot, big fan of this hire, and I think bringing in, people with connections to the program, ties to the program, is going to be huge. Not to mention those connections to Hawaii.
Hmm.
I don't think Oregon State's going to become the destination for Hawaiian football players, but having a connection to Hawaii is never a bad thing. There's great players that come out of there every year. If you can get a little bit of a better pipeline going, that's going to be big for them. And then you asked just about bringing in his own guys in general. Uh, I mean, yeah, I think just overall, I think Shepherd, what he's done in these early days has been really impressive. The staff is really coming together nicely. There's still some things we have to see what he does, but uh, if Brechterfield is a sign of what's to come, I mean that's impressive, and I'm sure he was being paid nicely at Baylor, so it's another sign that resources, our Oregon State is trying to give Shepherd the resources to be successful, and uh, his last known salary was at Washington was $575,000. So you have to assume Baylor was around the same range. So it gives you a decent idea.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely intuitive, and it's going to be interesting to kind of see how the assistant and coaches pool go together. And I'm also going to be curious eventually to find out, as a first-time head coach, what Oregon State's paying JaMarcus Shephard, right? Is it in the same, range that Trent Bray was as a first-time head coach? Because you can sometimes get away with getting your head coach a little cheaper if he, hasn't been a head coach before and kind of all those things, and then have potentially more money to spread around the staff, the roster, and what have you. Again, Beavers Edge Pod, Dylan, Ryan, and Brendan here with you guys. Ryan, I also want to get your thoughts too, just kind of on overall how the staff is kind of coming together. We've obviously reported some more names. You can get all the latest with the assistant coach hotboard on the front homepage, but just kind of your thoughts on what the staff and how it's kind of coming together.
I mean, with the names that we have reported, it seems that these are definitely going to be guys that have had some overlap with JaMarcus Shephard as previous stops. But really, I think the biggest thing that I'm kind of more looking at, I think, is what the defensive side of the ball is going to look like, because we haven't really seen much in the way of hires other than Brechterfield. As he's expected to join the staff. But defensive coordinator, I think, is going to be one of the telling positions there, because Shepard said he wants a guy with energy and a guy that can kind of match him in intensity. And if I'm Shepard, putting myself in his shoes, I probably want somebody that's been a head coach before, and that could be, really beneficial, I think, to Shepard hitting the ground running in year one, with that, not only with, the staff and resources, but just immediate on-field success, especially on that side of the ball as well too. So that's the big hire I really want to see. It's just a matter of, like, I think how everything else fills out afterwards, and we're just kind of in the bare bones structure, I think, of everything right now, with what the offensive side and what the defensive side of the ball is kind of looking like. But the philosophy that he has for both the offensive and defensive side of the ball are starting to show up in some of those hires that he's making.
Right. And I couldn't agree more. The other thing I'd like to add on to that too, I think it'd be paramount to have a defensive coordinator that has some previous head coaching experience. Just to kind of complement that side of the ball. That's obviously a real kind of niche thing you're looking for there, but I think the candidate can exist. And then kind of going along with this, and something Dylan kind of asked amongst ourselves not too long ago. You mentioned on one of our last podcasts, Dylan, that you think it would benefit Oregon State to move from kind of a 3-4 set to more of a 4-3 set. Can you kind of expand upon that a little bit? And, I'm wondering, Ryan, if it's possible a new defensive coordinator could look to do that.
Yeah, now you're asking me to get into defensive philosophy. Yeah, no, I just in general am a bigger fan of the 4-3 defense than the 3-4 defense. I think the
Sure.
4-3, the 3-4 defense just pigeonholes you at times. And I just don't know if it's you know, the best defense for the modern day college football that's definitely
Sure.
built around speed. I think the 3-4 defense played a big reason to why Oregon State's defensive line wasn't as disruptive as it could have been in
Sure.
the past. It's just not a defense that really uh, creates a environment in which defensive linemen can thrive like that.
Sure.
Uh, but I think defense 4-3 also makes it much more simpler defensively. Allows the guys to play fast, downhill, easy, less thinking, more reacting. And a lot of it just comes to I think you have to dominate the trenches, and you're going to have a better chance of doing that in the 4-3 than the 3-4. Uh, so yeah,
Yeah.
without going too deep into defensive philosophy.
No, for sure. I kind of have some of the same thoughts. And like we mentioned last podcast, Oregon State has pretty much been more of a 3-4 unit for, the almost the better part of a decade now. So it would be interesting to kind of see that shift. Ryan, you have any thoughts want to add to that?
No, you mentioned playing simpler, right? Like that's the big, I think, takeaway
Mm,
for not only the defensive side of the ball, but just the offensive side of the ball too. That's where players thrive, right? Like you want to put them obviously in positions to succeed, but also just go out there and play ball, right? Like that's like why Tim Tebesar's defense struggled was because they were at that defense was being asked to do too much on the field. And then when Bray took over the reins as defensive coordinator strictly under Jonathan, that was a complete change where guys like Simon Sandberg were saying, "Hey, like we can play fast, we can play a lot more. Just go and attack the ball rather than kind of just thinking about what other responsibilities that we have to deal with on that side." So I like more of going that approach, especially more simpler, because that's where I think you can see probably the most success on both sides, just not just the defensive side, but the offensive side of the ball. Like why when coaches have simplified down what they're doing on offense and defense, you see a lot more cohesion and a lot more
mhm.
success in production.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And I think, sometimes change is necessary. And we've kind of seen that, recently. And I go back to, one of my favorite press or favorite quotes from the press conference, guys, when, one of the JaMarcus Shephard was asked about roster building and he's like, what are it's going to be like? And he's like, I hope everyone realizes it's going to be hard. It's going to be very hard. Like his standard, his expectation, his, wanting to kind of, I would say, I would refer back to that quote, Ryan, that I talked about, where it's a toughness or a culture rooted in toughness, relentless effort, and discipline. And it's like reading between the lines, you kind of say, hey, maybe he's identified that as a few areas the program needs to get better at. So I think, Oregon State does need to do, some self-reflection. I think in one sense, you look at a 2-10 year and it's obviously tough and you need to rebound, but as I said previously, JaMarcus Shephard, I think, thinks like, a lot of Oregon State fans think, where it's like, hey, it was just 2 years ago, Oregon State was, a top 15 program. So it can be done. And I think you see it's not the it's not why Oregon State can't succeed, it's why it can succeed. And I think that's the breath of fresh air that JaMarcus Shephard certainly brings. And obviously, we're just kind of wrapping up the podcast. Curious if you guys have any final thoughts before we wrap up. Obviously, like I said before, make sure to check out BeaversEdge.com. We had so much content the last couple days with JaMarcus Shephard, with the recruiting class, much, much more. Eventually, we'll have some class superlatives coming from Dylan as well. And we teased earlier, there may still be a little bit of news out there that still could become as far as a guy who could maybe join the mix. But yeah, just final thoughts from you guys. We'll start with you, Ryan.
I think the only final thought I have is just I think people are going to wonder, hey, when does Shephard take over the reins full time? And
good call.
Sounds like while we were recording, that Shephard hopped on the Joe Beaver show and was asked about his sort of timeline to come back to Corvallis, and it'll be right after the SEC title game. So he'll fly back on Sunday. So it sounds like officially he'll stay through at least through Saturday, and then will be, I think, full time in Corvallis, barring anything unforeseen at this point. Obviously, would have to go back and listen to his response, but that's the timeline that he seemed to indicate.
No, that's some breaking podcast news right there. I love it, Ryan. Way to be on it. Way to be on it. And Dylan, any final thoughts you kind of have as well as we wrap things up?
Not the major. I do add, in terms of him outside of hiring a staff, which he can do. He can juggle both. I guess depending on once we go back and listen to that answer, I do wonder. I was wondering before that answer about what the timeline could be, because the transfer portal doesn't open for another month. So he would theoretically still have, 3 weeks where he could theoretically juggle both if needed. But, a lot of that would have depended on if Alabama wins or loses this week. Sure. I think they're safe as long as they don't get blown out. But either way, I think this has been a pretty good week for Oregon State football, to say the least. Is it going to fix all the issues in a week? No, absolutely not. But it's a shot of energy that the program needed right now heading into the offseason. It should be a fun offseason. This staff seems like grinders on the recruiting trail, so that's going to be fun to follow. So be sure to go over to Beavers Edge and follow us on the boards there, because I'm sure there'll be plenty of recruiting updates once that time comes.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be exciting. And as Dylan mentioned, the portal will be open. That's going to be a crazy, crazy time. And make sure to stay locked into BeaversEdge.com for all of that. And again, big thanks to Dylan, Callahan Crowley, and Ryan Harlan for joining us on this edition of the Edge Podcast, talking Oregon State signing class, the latest with JaMarcus Shephard and his staff, and much, much more. Again, big shout out to the guys, and make sure you guys stay locked into BeaversEdge.com for all the latest news. Thanks, and we'll talk to you guys next time.